So when I made the pranayama video, I neglected to say something super important, and that is before you begin any pranayama exercise, make sure your people are comfortable and that their knees are below their hips. You will notice with yourself that if the knees are even slightly up, you won't be resting. There will be a sense of muscular work to keep you up. And that's why we raise the bottom as much as we need to have the knees touch the ground. I think that some of you pretty much have knees that touch the ground, and that's confusing to the rest of us who see that you don't use something under your bottom, which of course you don't need to. But tell your students to raise their bottom above their knees, even if they take 6 blocks, one right next to each other, or sit on a chair. I mean, not a chair, but a big pillow. Okay, that's super important. All right. And you yourself don't meditate without the bottom being higher than the knees. Stephanie and I once went to a meditative Buddhist retreat, and she got us all ready to meditate. And she kept saying, make sure your bottom's higher than your knees. And I had the feeling like, I'm a yogi. I don't need to do it. And I didn't change it. And oh my, I suffered so much through that meditation. Stephanie, remember that? Anyway, ever since then, I say, bottom up higher than the knees. It's not a matter of pride or ego or anything. You're not a bad yogi if you need a pillow under your bottom. Okay, everybody. A couple of things have come up related to pranayama breathing. And as you know, pranayama comes through the process of understanding it as such. But the breath exercises, the exercises themselves are enormously helpful for piggybacking the metaphysical onto the physical. And here are some cues or some warnings I'd like to give you, and also stuff to really work on and try to integrate, even if you've got a really long practice that hasn't used that. This comes from centuries old treatises as well as modern day treatises, not as much from the internet. So before everything, I can always tell when the internet is being used and not the manual. The reason we use the manual is because it's deeply researched in many, many different ways. I used a lot of Iyengar and other masters. So please, please don't just, when you do an assignment, I'm not interested really in seeing what you do well. I would like to see what's new to you, or a new method that you might not do correctly, but that actually is what's in the manual, especially about breathing. Some of the things you have sent me are wonderful, but I don't know them necessarily. So, as I said, I think this might be the fourth time I've said it. If you do something new or something that is in your repertoire but not in the manual, please tell me why you chose to do that one and not one from the manual, because maybe the one in the manual is not good. What my impression is that you would rather just do what's easy. And we would like to shove ourselves past that, especially in this really advanced training. Do new things, even if they're not quite right. Oh, I'd be thrilled about that. The first thing to point out is that this part of the neck, the clavicles and this part, should never rise, never. Now, what happens when we do a nice big deep breath is that first the back and the bottom fill, the sides fill, and if we fill the rest, there might be an ever so slight raising, but it is not this. The head doesn't go back, the ribs don't go out, the shoulders don't rise. Now, some yogis, also some very advanced yogis, purposely draw their shoulders up in order to pull them down again. It is a method that is acceptable, but let's not do it in this training because it leads to breathing in and having an instinctive rising of the shoulders or the clavicles. Remember, the lungs do not, the opening of the lungs cannot raise the shoulders. It can raise this chest area and possibly the sternum ever so slightly. That's about all, and any other rising will shorten the area that your lungs are reaching down and will not be able to use the diaphragm correctly. So for a really good big breath, we've spoken about this before, you might have missed it, but definitely realize this: the biggest breath you can ever ever manage. Watch this area. It goes like this. There is no more room for breath to go in. I've got my lungs absolutely full of breath. All right, there will be no raising of this. So when you do your pranayamas to send to me, and some of you have already sent them, watch them and make comment yourself on what might be able to be changed. Please don't send me any pranayama exercises that are not in the manual or that are different from the manual. Sure, I have Bastrika in the manual, but it's the classic Bastrika. It's not this one, which we use in prenatal sometimes, because you can't really use Bastrika very much in prenatal. But explain why you chose that one. And the explanation shouldn't be because I know it and it's easy. Go instead and grab something that's hard or that is new and practice it. All right. Got a lot of hours every week to fill. Anyway, a couple of things that I'd like to explain. The three-part breath. The three-part breath is really three parts. The parts are not here a little, here a little, here a little. The parts are back and front, sides, and the sides go out. The muscles we use to expand the ribs are involved in that. And the last is filling the lungs to capacity, which will not raise this. Let me show you a pretty typical three-part yogic breathing. Breathe out first, like breathe it all out, and so that you're really dying for a breath, squeezing the belly muscles. Then the first part goes in, the second, the third, and that's all. Then let it out, top, sides, belly. All right, I'll try to do that a little bit more clearly. I won't talk, but maybe you'll see it. Now, I've been doing that in three parts, stopping a little bit so you could see it. It doesn't necessarily go that way. It goes. And we shouldn't see the head go back at all. We shouldn't see the clavicles rise, or God forbid, the shoulders rise. Kapalabhati is what we call skull shining or breath of fire. Now, there is some confusion on the internet about that, but from the classical yogis, breath of fire is Kapalabhati. It's not Bastrika. Bastrika is bellows breath. So Kapalabhati is very, very important. But the main thing is do not breathe in first. Like, sure, I mean, breathe in a little bit, but mostly breathe in a tiny bit, 2 inches down here. So the reason why is that if you breathe in and do your Kapalabhati, you've got it all stored here. Nothing can leave the top. You know, you can move the stomach nicely, but the top stagnates. You want to breathe out, then breathe in 2 inches, and then go into the dregs so that every breath out is, and it's really collapsing the lungs each time. You breathe in, you do this, then you're not collapsing the lungs and the air up here stagnates. So, Kapalabhati, I'm going to take a nice breath in first, just to purify, and then a really good breath out, and then a tiny breath in. Side here. Oh boy. Looks like I'm 18 months pregnant. Now, the thing about Kapalabhati is it's a forced, quick breath out that feels like 2 inches. I mean, you squeeze but then you have to let it go. In our culture, especially women have an awful hard time letting the belly go, and a good Kapalabhati will let the belly go. You'll notice that when the belly squeezes, the chest jumps, and that's normal because you're putting all of the muscles under the rib cage. And the jumping of the chest is actually an indication you're doing it correctly. That's Kapalabhati, and really only that. And we never let pregnant women do that one. All right, Bastrika too. No pregnant women for Bastrika. This is the bellows breath. Out, in, out, in, out, in. And it is like the first part of Kapalabhati, but then it's a shove of the second part, and it's out, in. So the belly goes breath out, breath in, breath out, breath in, breath out, breath in. And that is actually the closest breath we have to a singer's breath in a difficult passage. And you might get a tired back and you might get tired abdominals. The shoulders will not move from the front. It looks like this. I'll breathe out all the way in, almost all the way out. Actually, let's breathe all the way out and take a 2-inch breath in. This one is more like a four-inch breath. So here we go. It is the most tiring for the sometimes somewhat of the intercostal muscles, but the abdominal muscles and the back muscles. It's tiring. All right, that's that. That's the 3-part breath, the Kapalabhati, the Bastrika. And now for the queen of all pranayama breathing exercises, the Nadi Shodhana. It is called Nadi Shodhana. It's not called Nadi. The nadis are those nerve plexes throughout the body. It's posted on genesis1yoga.com. I'm trying to fix the recording, but it's there. So just to give you an example of why it would be important to use the manual and not just look it up online or quickly watch a video. First of all, because it is the learning part. We want to put the best we have into our learning and not the quickest or the most I don't know, easily accessible. Anyway, let's look at Nadi Shodhana as it is here. It's alternate nostril breathing. It is the queen of all exercises, uses alternate nostril breathing. First, the right hand, index and middle finger rest between the eyebrows, and the thumb closes the right nostril, while the ring finger, or both the ring and the pinky, close the left. All right. The other one is the second and third finger lie in the palm, and the pinky ring close the left, and the thumb closes the right. There are some things here that will be important for you to know, and I will always be able to tell if you haven't read it because you won't know this. Let's see. This is the Vishnu mudra. All right. It's Vishnu is a Hindu god, but it has to do with wisdom and the clarity of thought. So you might mention that. And Purika is the in breath, Rechaka is the out breath, Antara Kumbhaka is holding the in breath, and Baya Kumbhaka is holding the out breath. You probably wouldn't run into that if you had just taken your teaching of this from the internet. But should I ever get a student who actually reads the manual and says those words, it's happened to me once in all of my time. I usually spend the first 6 weeks telling people, use the manual, use the manual, use the manual. So please do. This will say right here before the in-breath, the right nostril is closed and the in-breath is full and slow. So we take the thumb, close the right nostril. Take the nice, long, slow in-breath. And always after the Purika, the breath in, and possibly Antara Kumbhaka, that means hold the breath a bit, then we switch. So after the in-breath, we switch the side for the Nadi Shodhana. Close the left, breathe out. Maybe you have a Baya Kumbhaka in which you hold the out breath, all very, very healthy for increasing lung capacity, increasing oxygen reception, etc. And then we breathe in the same nostril. At the top, we close that nostril and breathe out. So we breathe out a new nostril and in the same nostril. This is an ideal pranayama for moving prana up the sushumna by cleansing the Ida and Pingala channels. to the left and the right of the Sushumna. Now, if you hadn't watched the video yet, or if you haven't read the whole chapter yet, you will have no idea what that is. Another reason why it's really super good to read the manual. And when you don't know it, go back, look things up. This is part of being a 500, and it will do nobody any good to get the qualification of 500 without knowing this terminology and having done the more in-depth work. And the work you do beyond what I give you is actually going to help you the most when you lead your own training. I hope you wouldn't just lead the training letting everyone do what they do best and not really encouraging them to learn new things. This exercise begins and ends with, why is that annotate thing there? I would like to take that away. Oh, okay. It popped up on the other side. You might not have even seen it. This exercise begins and ends with the left nostril, which is the gentler, female, cooler balancing energy. It connects the left and right brain hemispheres, enlivens pranic flow, left and right in the body, spiraling around the sushumna, channeling as the flow circles upward, connecting all chakras and their associated emotional and subtle bodies. So that's the benefit of, going into the manual. Nadi Shodhana has a cult following. I don't know, breathing exercises. Read this, okay? It is a purifying pranayama exercise that coordinates, clears, renews, prepares for the rising of higher levels of consciousness. I must have written that because it's in blue, associated with the Ida and Pingala nadis, yin and yang, balance, strength, and peace. Those lines might not be in your copies. All right. So all of these have been researched quite a lot, and different lines of thought have been brought into these, not just a quick video of someone, doing the exercise as easily as they can for the masses or whatever it is. So please use the manual. Okay. Thanks, everybody.